Hello, everybody. Welcome to Season 7, Episode 8 of the EUphoria podcast. I'm Dracos. This is Cadril. As always, we're going to be bringing you all of the action about last week's games, the games that are upcoming, as well as some words from our special guest today, none other than Fnatic's Bwipo. We are, as always, available on YouTube. Wow, YouTube. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. Listen wherever you feel comfortable. Do what you're excited about, dear audience. And let me tell you, last week was an absolute banger for me and Cadril. We had a great week of casting. I was very proud of it. Thanks again for all the people who reached out and told us that we really super duper popped off. On the other hand, it was not a banger for many of the teams in the LEC. The good news, for one team, things do seem to be looking up, Cadril, and that's Misfits. And I want to get your take on the whole Misfits rising from the ashes, not quite the Misfits miracle run, but the 3-win streak into the loss versus G2. Like, let's talk a little bit about Misfits. What's your read on this team right now?
I don't know. It's hard to say because the 3-win streak that Misfits has was against XL, Schalke, and Astralis, I believe, right? So it's not like the strongest teams, but they did play clean. They did play well. They found a playstyle that works for them. Misfits playstyle is quite obvious to me, at least. That works. It's like weak side top. Here it's doing well on Gragas Sion. Let's counterpick bot and get a really strong mid jungle. So the way the dynamic works is here it plays weak side and here it plays engage. And the good thing is with this composition, with having a weak side top and a tank, strong side mid jungle, and then a really counterpick bot, you have the push in bot, you have a winning mid jungle, and you have engage top. Very simple, really easy to execute. 25 minutes, your top laner presses R to go in, and your team follows up because you're not behind, you're even or ahead with that comp. So I think against easy teams, against teams that don't know how to snowball so well in early game or don't have really good late game decision making, I think those kind of comps always work. So they found a formula for them, which I really respect. And Misfits is definitely looking hot in the race for playoffs. I mean, they're 1 win above XL. They're tied with Schalke. And there's 3 games left. And I think their strength of schedule is not the hardest. It's a lot easier than I would say, than perhaps Schalke or anything like this. You know, they have Fnatic. They have Vitality, I believe. And
wait, hold on. You might want to hold on to that because I checked last night, and Misfits currently have Fnatic.
Actually,
They have Vitality, and then they have
Mad Lions, right?
So it's not an easy schedule.
It's not that easy. Okay, but I saw
actually.
Schalke having Fnatic, and I was like, okay, they probably have a hard week. But then I saw they have Fnatic, and then they have Vitality XL. So
yeah, Schalke have So, and we're going to talk more about the matches that really matter that are coming up this week because at the end of the day, guys, there's still 15 games left to play. That's 2 to the power of 15 remaining scenarios. I'm not going to do that math.
Do it, Dracos.
I'm not. It's a lot of zeros. I have graduated. I did my time in the education system. I'm not going back. Bottom line, there's a lot of variables, but at the end of the day, there are going to be matches that are more important, and we'll look at some of those later. But yeah, overall, Misfits definitely not the easiest schedule, but the power is in their hands to control this. They already we said they had that week where they beat Schalke, they beat Excel. Things look pretty good. And overall, like things look really solid for this team. That said, there's always a chance that Schalke come up big in this final week, maybe make their own little mini miracle run to come out on top. It's still a very close race. And in general, I'm excited about Misfits. I'm on the same page as you. I think that we heard in the interview from Herit, I'll bring it up again, that playing around mid was what was kind of bringing them success, and that kind of shift really helped the team out. And we saw a little bit of a departure from that in the game versus G2, where they definitely had drafted a strong mid laner for VTO and the Lucian, but then it was a lot of bot lane focus. I think kind of out of necessity, trying to support this Caitlyn Braum lane, and it was clear that VTO is not quite as comfortable, not quite as able, and it's also against Caps. So I don't want to entirely say that it's the strategy that hurt them here or the shift away from mid lane focus, but I am curious to see, does Misfits just go, okay, this is our winning formula in the final week? Like, we folks play around mid, we leave bot on their counter pick on their island, top lanes on their island, like just give here at something with CC, like who cares?
But I think this Misfits versus G2 game, I am convinced Misfits should have won this game from the early game. They just made one huge decision flaw, and basically what happened was, for context, Misfits drafted Lilia, Caitlyn Braum, they late invaded, they forced Mickey's flash, and then they had a split map against Jankos, who had the farm topside comes to Sekrim. They stacked a very big wave in bot. Mickey and Reckless were both 20% HP, no potions, only 1 flash and 1 heal, and they didn't dive them. They could have forced TPs, they could have dove, they could have forced something. And even, I think in the interview afterwards, Reckless was saying something like, we were scared. We thought something could happen, but nothing did happen. So I think that Misfits missed a huge window there. I think the interesting thing to me is this Misfits versus G2 game was so similar to TSM versus C9 now. If you haven't watched TSM C9, it was the exact same thing. Caitlyn, Lilia, and Morgana versus Hecarim, Kai'Sa, Nautilus. It was literally mirror draft, the only difference with the solo laners in a sense. And instead of Braum, you had Morgana. And they also late invaded bot side, and they also got 2 kills in the early game. They also forced the split map in a sense. So it was really interesting to see 2 different regions, 2 exact similar games. Just I think Misfits could have pulled it off a lot more easy and actually forced more. And I think if they did that against G2, they probably would have won. I'm not sure if that's because they're against G2 that they were scared to force or because they had double TP, but trying to do something probably would have helped them win that game.
Yeah, and I think to Misfits as a team overall, I will say that in general, I think that the copy Vander bot lane has not been the most explosive. And in some of their wins, it really feels like they redeemed themselves. Like the Karma Ezreal game looked really, really good from both of them overall. But they still, like, diving towers, I still don't think we've seen that level of aggression come in quite yet. But again, anytime you play G2, and every team talks about this, like, you have to be willing to fight them. You are not going to out-macro them. We talked about it in the cast, where it's like, oh, wow, one really well-timed reset from Reckless and Mickey where, you know, there's Misfits aren't in a room to punish, and suddenly all of that lane advantage, those summoner spells being gone, 20% HP remaining on both characters, and suddenly, we're full health, we're fine, the Caitlyn auto attack range is not really a big deal anymore, and we're just going to go even.
That's the thing, they got a free base, and even though they had Flash level 1, they got chunked out level 1 the trade, they were split map on, and like you said, like, going for dives is what you need to do. I think that even when I was watching the VOD of the game, very small thing to note, Razork or Vander actually pinged the wave that they want to dive on. They were spamming assistance on the 3rd wave coming into bot. And now when you're spamming assistance on a wave, the team comms are, we're diving on this wave or we're doing something on this wave. So you ping it to give your team information. But then Razork hovered around and then he thought for a couple seconds and he just ran off to his jungle. And I was like, no, come back, please. It's the freest dive ever. You can beat G2 right here. And then, they missed the opportunity. And like you said, free base, they came back on the lane. They lost nothing. And then, if you're not getting anything in the Caitlyn lane against Kai'Sa Nautilus, it's open season.
Yeah, it is. And credit to Misfits, they kept it close as long as they could. Even in a massive gold deficit, they were still able to make some of the fights look competitive. I think that's partially because of the nature of G2's team composition, though, because, like, when you have like this TF Karma as your solo laners, you're definitely, if you mis-execute on a fight at all, I feel like it's pretty easy to get punished.
Yeah, but then the backdoor came in. Cap secures the Nexus.
Yeah, the thing is, everything was literally stacked against Misfits, so that there was never, they got so far behind that there were no right decisions left. So despite the fact that their mid to late game was pretty good, even if they should have played the early game much better, it just eventually just didn't matter because G2 were just too far ahead.
Yeah, you fight Drake, you lose your Nexus, you fight Nash, you're going to lose your inhibs, and if you lose your inhibs, you have no Nexus towers left against the TF, and then the Karma's pushing, and then they have Hecarim Karma, they can engage. It might have looked good, but it was really hard to win.
No, it was pretty impossible. And again, this is G2 mostly in control of the entire game, to be clear for anyone out there. Like Misfits, it's not like Misfits are going to be contesting G2, but they definitely had an opportunity to in that early game, and it was kind of sad to see them, let's say, like, give that up a little bit. On the other hand, the other G2 game, the unofficial match of the week, as many people were hyped up for it. Turns out it was good that it wasn't the match of the week because it was boring as all hell.
It's scripted. We knew it.
It was so boring. Holy crap. The first G2 Rogue was like this thriller where it was like, how are they fighting back with this massive gold deficit? Oh my God, Larson, the ginger god, he's so incredibly clutch. And this game was like, to be honest, early game was a little bit grief central. Like Caps definitely like made some like little early mistakes in lane and like almost got all in and then kind of, walked back in. But then, they just started they one-shot Larson mid lane. Jin W did not look like a balanced ability that game. It was like one random piece of damage onto one character and suddenly Reckless from like 3 screens away. It's like, you're snared now. And it's like, well, when you're snared against the Lucian with 2 items, you're dead.
Yeah, I don't know. That game was a bit of...
Yeah,
I mean, it was fun for me at the start because from like a pro player point of view, if you're playing jungle on Rogue's team comp in that game, you have 3 pushing lanes. Azir's pushing, Nara's pushing, you have pushing bot with the Caitlyn Morgana. It looks lit, but then all of a sudden, Larson dies in a 1v1 when he tries to TP back because Inspire didn't cover him on the mid wave. Because basically what happened was Larson was winning lane, Caps based, he TP'd back, and then Larson tried to push the wave in and Cap just killed him in his face with Inspired right next to him. So that sucked. One mistake. Second mistake was the Caitlyn Morgana actually got pushed in and then were late on the base. So Mickey could roam mid. Larson died again. And then the third one was Jankos ganks top. Odo Amne dies. So all 3 of your lanes are just lost in the first 5 minutes with 3 pushing lanes.
For the record, this happens all the time in LEC, and I've noticed it a ton. And I don't know, maybe you have more thoughts on this, but there's this situation that just keeps coming up, which is basically that your jungler is generally in your area, is generally around. And so you like push forward a little bit, right? But then enemy support or enemy jungle is always right next to you in the frickin' bush. And because champions, like most of the champions that are being played between mid jungle are usually 100 to 0 in you, right? Like maybe if TF's there and it's like TF Lilia, like God forbid anyone drafts that, but like then they're not going to one-shot you. But in this case, it was like Lucian Leona. And so Inspired is literally on Raptors. Mickey's in the bush above Larson. And in the half a second that Mickey has a lead over like the Lilia, Azir is already dead.
Yeah.
It's like your jungler was there. So like on paper, maybe it's the right choice, but this keeps happening. It's not just this game. There's so many games where it's like the difference of a half a second in rotation time, or thinking that you can push because your jungler's next to you, but not knowing if there's someone in the bush. You know, all these people sneaking into bushes, getting right on top of you, and you just get one tapped, and it's like, well, your jungler was there. Like on paper in solo queue, I would tell you that you're fine to push, but you just keep people getting one tapped in the mid lane.
This is a thing that pro players do subconsciously, in a sense that if I'm Lars and I'm pushing mid my jungle's top side, I have a full sense of confidence that I'm hugging the right side of my lane. And Mickey knew that. You saw Mickey's pathing coming out of base. He could have gone through bot where his pink ward was, where Larson is hugging top side because he has no vision there. Or he could go through top where Mickey actually has no vision, but Larson doesn't either. So he uses his full sense of information to actually punish him. So that's a really good play by Mickey. But just in general, I think that having 3 pushing lanes is good and dandy. 3 pushing lanes will get you advantages. You can get turret plates, push in, find enemy jungle, but they're also very dangerous. You're very dangerous because all 3 of your lanes are gankable. All 3 of your lanes, if they fall behind 1 small millisecond in tempo or they get killed, the lane's lost. So that's why when we talk about team comps, we talk about like Quinn, Nidalee, Lucian, Caitlyn, Morgana, this kind of comp, pushing lanes, really OP. If you play 100% perfectly to every single right click, you'll always win every game.
Yeah.
But because of human error, that's why team fight compositions and scaling is always better. Because one small mistake can make it so that Quinn is out of the game for the rest of the game, and it's never going to be useful. So having 3 pushing lanes is good. You saw it in Rogue's game. But sometimes when you fall a little bit behind, it's really hard to come back against things that can engage on you.
Yeah, and in theory, again, it feels good, and then one mistake and suddenly it's open season for the enemy jungler. Because even though you're behind in your individual lane matchup, maybe you can still get pressure when you're down slightly just because you have a winning map advantage. But then, we don't have as many items, so now the Nidalee one taps you. So the second anyone ganks, you're instantly dead, and it's one. Oh god, I say one tap way too many times.
Yeah,
it's such a fun word.
One tap.
One tap.
No, but you're right. There's so many. Like the thing is, there's so many variables in the game that no matter what you expect to happen, it probably won't happen.
Yeah.
Just because of human error, game states, changes and differences, roams, push
not
priorities.
To dig too far into this, but I mean, like, it's obviously different and was much easier to play these compositions back when, junglers could build green smite and ward everything.
Exactly.
When there was infinite wards, when there were sightstones, and you could get flawless vision on, essentially both jungle quadrants from both sides of the map. Then it was actually literally impossible to play against these compositions. But now there's not enough vision in the game. Vision is very easy to clear because sweepers is so accessible so early, and so you just never. At some point, you're going to have to play poker. You know what I mean? At some point, you're just going to have to make some bets. You're going to have to take some risks. You're going to have to flip some coins, or you're going to have to back off and not take any risks at all, which also often for these compositions, it doesn't work out in your favor.
And that's what I love about the game. I love that there's no more vision. The green ward basically meant that even if you don't get vision on one side, you get vision on, let's say I put 2 wards on his blue buff area. If the jungle's there, he's there. If he's not there, well, you can guess where he is. He's on the other side. So having one side of jungle vision gave you the whole vision of the map basically just by trial and error, and essentially just saying, well, he's not there, he must be here. So the green ward being removed makes it so you have less vision, which means you can only really put 1 ward in the enemy jungle most of the time, which is a trinket from your side laner, and you can play with that information. But then comes the game of I can play with your information to make you think you actually think one thing and I'll do the other, which is what Mickey did, right? Playing with the enemy team's information to give them a false sense of confidence and then catching them off guard is a very, very common thing in League.
I like it because I think that era of League of Legends was very much to me chess. Like all the information is there. There are always going to be objectively right and objectively wrong decisions, right? And I think while that was cool, it got boring for me pretty quickly, right? That was like a much slower meta.
Lane swaps.
Yeah, you could just make the right choice. There was always the right choice. It was never like, do we flip it here? And there were still teams that tried to innovate, still teams that got crazy. Like the Fnatic death push still happened in that era of League of Legends, right? Teams could still get crazy with it. But now it's poker. It's like there is, you've got 5 cards in front of you. Everyone knows generally what's going on, but they don't know what you're holding. You don't know what they're holding. And sometimes you just got to take the risk and see if they've got it,
That's what I love about the game. Sometimes you just got to flip it. Sometimes you just got to go all in. Sometimes you have to have the number advantage or the resource to just say, screw it, we're going for this play. And then enemy team might one-up you with like a trump card of like, well, I'm actually here, or some kind of flank or some 5,000 elo shockwave like Larson did. against Mad Lions. Those kind of crazy things where the game's actually losing for you, but you do something crazy and it turns into a win. So I love the innovation that League of Legends gives players.
And a little off topic, obviously, from the LEC itself, but I love that progression of League of Legends. I didn't love it at first. It was very weird to me in that era when all the sightstones and the green smites were taken away, but I love it now for sure. And what I'll say is, speaking of being able to flip it, being able to find the miracle, being able to find it in that moment, probably the best poker players that we have in the league right now, despite their losses this past week, is SK. Treats the consistent engages from the middle of nowhere, taking down Excel the only time Excel had a lead, hex flashing over the wall to beat Mad Lions. Okay, but this week, it's falling apart a little bit, I say, as this phone. It goes through my do not disturb, Phil. I'm gonna have to repeat that part, unless you can cut out there's some in this house.
God, that was a banger.
Speaking of teams that have been playing poker, that have been winning big. Okay, for context, I have to explain the story because we're gonna cut it out. But my alarm. I have my phone on Do Not Disturb. We always do, but my alarm goes through that, right? Because Google wants to wake me up. The problem is that my alarm song is a playlist, one of 6 songs. Today it played WAP. So what you missed is in the middle of my point. It was there's some in this. There's some. So you missed that moment. And it's gonna get cut out, but I still need you to know that it happened because it was joyous, magical. And I wish we could share it with you. But
it was such a serious topic.
DMCA baby, we just can't play it.
Such a serious topic, and then I hear this.
Anyway, what I was gonna say. Anyway, so SK Gaming, we had a smooth transition originally, but it's all messed up now. SK Gaming, blah blah blah. Treats obviously making these big miracle engages consistently, but this week it really felt like it fell apart. It felt like SK looked like less of the kind of titans that they have in previous weeks, and now it feels almost I'm getting nervous, and you're going to learn this about me, kid, the more that we do this show. I'm very quick to get on and jump off of team hype trains. And it's a bad trait, you know what I mean? It's definitely not, but that's kind of who I am. And what I'll say is when I see this game, I immediately get scared. I'm like, oh crap, all of those Treats miracle engages that I was excited about, maybe it's really bad that they needed those in the first place, and there are things that I should be worried about that this needed to happen at all.
Yeah, the thing is with these kind of plays, these clutch moments, you look at it and you think, wow, that actually turned the whole tide of the game. Like Treats against Mad Lions, he catches him out with the Alistair Hex Flash. Against Excel, he finds unbelievable engages against a teamfight comp with his single target damage comps. Gen X follows up on the Gnar, and they find miracle engages 5-0 teamfight when they're behind in gold against a better composition in teamfight. So I definitely attribute 2 of their most recent wins to the clutch factor, 100%. And the clutch factor can be always a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing, because if you're only winning games via a clutch factor, then are you actually a good team? That's the question, right? Like, look at Rogue, right? Rogue, obviously a great team, super clinical. They were losing a game against Mad Lions. Larson hits one shockwave, changes the whole game, they get Baron. Clutch factor, it turned the game. Whereas SK, I feel like most of their games are coming from clutch factors, and most of them coming from Treats.
Yeah.
And then I think the biggest thing is this weekend, they went 0-2, I believe, against Fnatic, which I think that game was quite sloppy, I would say, from both sides. I think SK kind of threw on the engage on bot when Gen X TP'd, and then for 5v5, and they got 5-2'd. But against Vitality, like, if you're fighting for third place at the end of spring, you can't be losing to teams like Vitality.
And to be fair, Vitality set it up this week.
For
Vitality went 2-0. They beat both SK and Excel. And that, like, Vitality, I've got Crownshot in my DMs being like, I told you to believe, because the miracle run is still alive. Like, it's possible. It takes a lot of crap for that to happen. But
Crownshot, if you're listening, we had 96% chance to make playoffs, 4% not to make. If your chance is even 0.01% chance to make it to playoffs, you can make it. Numbers are fake data.
I'll say it right now. I believe in Crownshot. I believe in Vitality. I believe in the miracle run. It's technically out, not completely in their hands, but if anybody can do it, it's Crownshot and Vitality.
And the boys. Shout out to the Vitality fans who've stuck with those guys through thick and thin. They're brought up in literally every interview. So if you're a Vitality fan and you're supporting your team, even in this very difficult years, I could even say, very difficult years, good on you. You'll love to see it. That said, SK, I think we're just going to have to keep our eyes on them, see what's coming up for them, because I think that it's still, the expectation is still that they're going to finish playoffs, right? I think it's pretty hard, near impossible for them to get pushed out at this point, but they're looking like the 6th place team. And what I will say is that I hope that they can get to a point where they do not need these massive clutch moments, because clutch moments are really going to help you in a best of 5. But clutch moments are what you need for
that game 4, that game 5 when you're down 3K, when you messed up the early game a little bit. It can't be every game when you mess up the early game you need to have this clutch, because it's just not going to happen 5 times in a row. You know what I mean? Or 3 times in a row.
And I think a good measure for SK will be this weekend. They face off against, I believe, Rogue, G2, and Astralis. So Astralis should be a win for them, one would expect. But then Rogue and G2, the 2 strongest teams Europe has, and SK is sitting around 3rd or 4th place right now, I believe. Yes, they might finish 6th. But if they can do well...
They're 5th. They're 8 and 7 right now.
They're 5th right now. So it'll be a good measure for them. They're middle of the pack from all the teams, and they're going against the top 2 teams, right? Even taking one game of the top 2 teams is already a statement.
Promising start to playoffs.
Exactly. So even making the games close is a good statement. I would expect them to make playoffs for sure. But it will be a good measure to see what SK is really made of, because it's the last week of the split. You've had all split long, preseason, everything to practice up to this one weekend. Show us what you got before playoffs. If they can beat Rogue or G2 or even do well against them, then there's hope for them, I think.
Let's go. I'm about it. Let's see where you can go, SK. Shout out to that team. Shout out to that org. But enough about... Well, we'll talk about SK again briefly here. But first, we got to introduce our wonderful guest. Got to welcome him to the show. So let's get started. Let's talk to Bwipo.
Bwipo.
All right, and here he is, none other than the man himself. Welcome, Bwipo, to the podcast. 1, how are you doing this fine day? And 2, I would love to get you to weigh in on what we were just talking about previously, which is, what are your thoughts on SK? How good are they? Really, are we maybe overhyping them? For the record, we put them in B tier on our tier list above a lot of other teams, including Misfits, Schalke, and Excel, the other playoffs contenders. And Vitality, too, who's also rising. But yeah, give us your thoughts, Bwipo.
Well, first of all, I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah. Nice.
Hope everyone else is doing well too.
For sure, man.
And SK, I mean, I think they're all right. It's hard to really say exactly how good they are or where they stand, but I think they're a decent team. They've got like their own niche with the whole like engaged support, pick as many bruisers as you can get and then run at them. They're doing pretty well, like they usually have this little goon squad going on. They like picking some AD carries that get in there. I vaguely remember like stuff like Vayne's, Kallista's, Tristana's.
Yeah.
Not too successful against our bot lane, unfortunately, but
when
it works, it works. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that they can be B tier, assuming that they are playing their comfort. Yeah. But once you take them off the comfort, that's where it's going to be interesting, right? We're going to be slowly but surely waddling into a best of 5 scenario, and we'll have to see how well they can perform without that comfort.
And you said they didn't do well against your bot lane. Now, your bot lane has, I think, the highest amount of the 2v2 kills in the LEC by far. And Upset the last couple of weeks has been popping off. Do you see any differences from this version of Fnatic's bot lane to last year's Fnatic bot lane?
Yeah, there's some differences for sure. I mean, obviously, it was a pretty big swap. But all things considered, I think the focus of what a good laning phase has shifted for us. Like, obviously, winning lane is winning lane, right? And just in general, like I think that Reckless, even now, you can see it in the G2 drafts. It's like, pick me Senna, pick me Jhin, and I'll be fine. And get me to a certain point, and the game will always be in good hands. Whereas that's not really what my current new bot lane is about. It's more like make sure that the draft is constructed in a way where they can't play the game. Like just make sure that if they get this matchup, they can't play the game. If they get this matchup, they can't play the game. And it's not like I'm putting it in a way where it sounds like a little more selfish than it really is. It's basically just like give me both sides of a matchup everyone is playing, and I'll win both sides. Or we will win both sides in this case. So, I think that there's the small difference there where it's way more about making sure that we're in a good spot, and rather than we will be in a good spot no matter what, so just get us there. I think that's the biggest difference from last year to this year.
Yeah, and it feels like this team is just continuing to evolve. I feel like we've seen so many different versions of Fnatic on stage. You guys obviously had a pretty good week this week. The weeks before were a little bit rough. You had, the start of the season where it was just like blindly scrappy. I feel like we've seen every spectrum, every possible team represented by Fnatic, at least in one game this season. So I'm curious where you feel like you guys sit right now. How do you feel about the team's development? Do you feel like you have a very clear, distinct style overall? What are your thoughts on Fnatic's development this season?
I think most of it was growing pains because again, new players, new team, like dynamics are going to be different. The way we view the game is going to be different. Meta's going to be different. Like what works for us would change. Like coming into the split, I think I don't know. I had something like 12 solo kills over like 8 games or something, or 9 games. Yep. So it was like last pick top is the way. Like we should last pick top. Like this guy's popping off every game, and then I didn't have as much success with the last picks I chose. So we were like, maybe this isn't really working. We had a 0-2 week where I got killed by Gnar twice in 2 separate games, 1-on-1. So it was like, okay, let's reevaluate these last picks and see what we can do. So at this point, I don't know, I feel pretty confident. Basically just took a step back and said, I think if I just play a simple, more meta top lane matchup where I'm playing Renekton Gnar or Gnar Renekton, my bot side's probably going to be winning. So we're going to be fine as long as I can put some pressure on the map. That's basically what we came to the conclusion to.
Yeah.
And if we just play out the game for the best of ones, we can just figure it out. If need be, we can obviously turn it back on for playoffs. But we agreed that for best of ones till now, I think it'll make more sense to just play the game as it is and just rely on the meta picks until we're pushed beyond that, rather than looking for reasons to play more than the meta.
Yeah.
For someone to push us there, rather than the other way around.
Yeah, it makes sense, and it feels, you can see that, and it definitely feels like it's working sometimes, even if it's maybe not as flashy as the Riven that you got to play versus SK the first time you faced. It's not just one-shotting everyone. My God, that was a montage game. But obviously the win is the most important part, even if it does mean taking a little bit more of a backseat for the team. I do want to talk a little bit about like how you feel this team communicates and how this team functions behind the scenes. You used a phrase that I love for SK called the Goon Squad, and it's not so long ago when Broxa and Reckless were on this lineup that you used to, that you used to use the same thing to describe that, and there was like almost like, I don't know, the Houndmaster, like pulling you guys back, not letting you unleash the beast, was I believe how you described this. So I'm curious now how the leadership, how the communication structure works on this team, because you and Hylissang historically were always like the center for really confident, really aggressive, maybe high risk plays. So how is that communication dynamic functioning now? Is it still the same thing where you guys are like holding back and someone has to hold you back, or how much has this shifted? Because it's been years, right? And I know that it's been gradually shifting over time, but like comparing it to what it was so long ago where you guys were the beasts waiting to be unleashed, like how has that shifted now that you have like Nisqy and Upset on the lineup?
I think it's relatively the same. I don't think like anyone's holding us like back too much. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I think in general, like based on the champions we're playing, it's actually not a bad way to play at all. Bot lane meta I think is Alistar Rel. Like I think they're the most picked supports by like miles.
Yeah.
In competitive gameplay right now, which means that obviously if your Alistar and Rel aren't playing like psychopaths, something is going wrong, because these champions are designed to just dive in one versus as many as you can find. Like that's kind of the idea, right? Top lane, Renekton, even in the jungle, up until recently, and even after the nerfs, Olaf, Udyr, these champions just kind of run into champions and just try to do what they can. So all things considered for the meta, I think it's actually not a bad way to play at all. You need to, pick the right fights. That's the skill of it, obviously. But all things considered, I think we just kind of do our thing, and if it goes wrong, what's important is that we're just we're okay with that. Just keep playing the game. Making one mistake doesn't mean you can't win the next fight, and that's what's most important.
And is this your favorite kind of meta? Just kind of run at them, engage head first? Because I think that, listening to Fnatic voice comms over the last few weeks, even spring, even last year, it feels like you guys always just want to fight. So is this your kind of meta, you think, as a team?
I don't know. Like, I think what's important is really that, I think the difficulty of being on Fnatic and being a part of this team is that it's recognizing when people want to fight, right? It's when people want to fight and when it's good to fight. And it's like, sometimes there's going to be a fight that I want to pick that someone else doesn't want to pick. And then when I don't want to pick a fight, someone else wants to pick a fight. That's the hard part. So like when I play Volibear, for example, there's this, it's not really a meme, but there's a lot of bruisers I play and I like to scale with them. I don't pick Volibear to win early game, which it's different from every other Volibear, right? Because most people that play Volibear are like all about taking grasp and winning their lane, trying to smash a bruiser versus bruiser matchup. But that's not how I like playing him. I like scaling with him. So it's a bit of an identity shift because people have to like understand that I'm here to scale. So if there's like a dragon fight and I'm playing Volibear, it's like, oh guys, I don't want to fight this one. I still have 2 more items to build before I get really online. And that's a bit of a shift. And then at the same time, when I called off one of the fights, the next time I'm going to want to fight because now I have my items, but then someone else is like, oh, but now the opportunity is gone. And that's kind of the hard part about our team because, well, we're very confident when we feel like we can win the fight. So calling someone off of like, oh, we shouldn't be fighting right now is rather difficult. And yeah, I think we would probably profit from learning how to do that a little bit better. Because it turns out to be like, you know what, Haley's confident that we can win this fight.
Let's go.
Whatever. I'll just show up. I'll just show up and see what happens. And if it works out, it works out. And if it doesn't, well, at least I can still scale.
That confidence is interesting. And I had a bit of a separate question on a similar sort of topic, more of a holistic point of view, where it's like when you face a team that's supposedly, let's say, better than you on paper, like last year, Top Esports, for example, just a team that the public opinion, the sentiment is that this team should be stronger than you. How do you come into those games in a mental state? Do you come into the game with a realistic state of mind where you're like, yeah, they're pretty good, let's actually respect them? Or do you just have some sort of overconfidence to drown out those kind of public opinions to just say like, screw it, we're just going to go in, I don't care who you are, we're going to be Fnatic?
I think it just comes from laning phase. Like it always comes from laning phase, I think. Like based on your laning phase, it's always going to be how strong you feel in the game. Like I think that's something that you can carry over from solo queue even. Like this is something that every League of Legends player feels and has done before. It's basically, depending on how well your lane goes, you can feel for what you can get away with, right? And I think against Top Esports specifically, like I think our bot lane was feeling themselves a lot, right? Because they were getting 2v2 kills left and right. And I think it's the main reason why that series was so close is because in the lane, people felt like they could get away with what they wanted, right? Like they could just make the play they wanted and it wasn't that scary. Whereas against teams like RNG, for example, in the past, when nothing was really going well for us in the laning phase, it would be very hard, and I think that's generally speaking how international competition, I think that's like the biggest hurdle Western competition has against Asian competition is like you get through that idea of like, oh, we're weaker in lane.
Yeah.
And you kind of get over that, like you just win lane. But that's obviously easier said than done.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just, if you win lane, there's hope. If you don't win lane, it's a bit harder to play the game. And that's just the way the game works, right?
Yeah, and I like the way you distill that down because I think that there was for a long time so many years where people were just getting hard skill checked in lane, right? And you still see it, I think, in a lot of the play-in rounds where you just see certain regions are just better mechanically than other regions. And like the game you can say whatever you want as a caster, like, well, they've got this comp, so they should scale. And then the Azir solo kills Dilution 3 times in the first 8 minutes. And you're like, well, never mind. So I guess the game's unplayable.
Yeah.
I do want to shift again, though, back to kind of more on Fnatic as a whole. And I know you're going to get a lot of questions like this year. So, but I'm curious, and so I'm gonna jump in on the Fnatic kind of overall question bandwagon. But with Reckless gone, Bwipo, I look at you and I go, this guy's the Fnatic franchise player. And don't get me wrong, Haley's been there for a long time too. And I think if either of you were to leave the team, if Selfmade were to leave the team, I think it'd be a big loss. And I think everyone would ask, what does this team look like with this guy gone? But it's only you that I look at and I go, who is the face of this organization if this guy leaves? You're the only player that really clicks for me. And now if you're a Fnatic fan and you're watching this and you think it's somewhat different, please feel free to call me out. I think that there is room for a difference of opinion here. But do you feel that pressure? Do you feel like you are the face of Fnatic now? I mean, it's a big org. You are like, I think, the most talkative, most charismatic guy in interviews. So do you feel that pressure? Do you recognize that at all? Is that something you agree with? Or do you just think that that's not something that really exists for Fnatic anymore?
Oh, I mean, it exists. It's just it's more laid back, I guess. Like it's far more. I don't want to say relaxed, but it's definitely not as much of a. It's not as front and center as it used to be, right? Like mostly Reckless, I guess it used to be. Like Reckless was like up front and center, right? Like he was the face of Fnatic. No one can really argue it. He's the guy that stuck around the longest, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you don't really get to argue with it. It's just he's there, like it or not. Whereas now it's more like me and Hilly are still around, and the fact that we kind of stuck around together makes it less of a one-man burden, I guess. It doesn't have to be a burden, but it's like it's not so much a one-man thing as a two-man thing. Like I feel like it's something I share with Hilly, and generally the culture that we brought to the team slowly, having a more how do you say it? Trying to find the right word here.
Yeah, it's fine.
Having a more relaxed approach to the game. It's not all about excellence. It's about winning, and whatever it takes to win is what matters.
Yeah,
and I think that's something that me and Hilly kind of brought with the team. Is like, it doesn't matter how bad we look. We really don't care. As long as it gives us a chance to win, we'll do it. And because me and Hilly share that, it's not so much about us being the face rather than us winning. And as long as we win, we don't care. So, because we haven't been winning too much in the past few years, it hasn't really been that tough to deal with it, because obviously a lot of the pressure that comes with being the best team is about winning. And well, we haven't been the best team, and that's just the reality of it, right?
Yeah.
So more of that pressure is just going to G2, and we're kind of just trying our best to reach that point again of where we can win, and that's what we're focused on. So I don't really use that much time or spend any time at all really thinking about who's the face of Fnatic. I'm just trying to get Fnatic back to winning.
Yeah, I wanted to just do a follow-up question what Draco said about being the face of Fnatic. I mean, as the sort of, let's say, face of Fnatic in a sense, has the growth of your career actually surprised you in a way? Have you impressed yourself? Think back 3 or 4 years ago, 17, 18-year-old Bwipo. Would you have ever imagined where you are now, like the face of Fnatic? You've been to Worlds Finals, winning the split, things like this, the position you're in. Have you exceeded your own expectations, you think?
I did the first year, yeah, for sure. The first year it's hard to go be a rookie and play World Finals and then one-up it, right? I mean, winning would have been it. Winning would have been it, but not quite. All things considered, I think it wasn't a year without problems. Like 2018 for me, it was, I had a pretty terrible performance at MSI. Summer playoffs weren't very good for me, but then I found my stride at Worlds. So, there's that. Credit to my girlfriend. I like giving credit to where credit is due. I feel like it helped me situate myself emotionally, which is something that I feel like a lot of players don't have. Because I think that's where most of the growth came from, for me at least. Because playing the game, for me, it's always just been playing the game, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why I had a lot of success in my first year, because I didn't really find a way to play the game. I didn't have to gain experience too much, because I already went to some... I went to LCL, I went to TCL, like I played in Russia and Turkey, and like there I basically realized it's like, if I just win my lane and then play the game from there, it's usually easier. Like competitive gameplay is not so much different from solo queue in that sense. It's like, just if you play a solid laning phase and find ways to cheese people and get advantages, that's good enough. Like you don't have to beat someone on raw merit alone. You can just be better, smarter. Don't have to be better, you can be smarter, or you can be better and be dumber. Either way works. All that matters is that you get ahead. That's kind of the story of League of Legends. And well, since I've become a pro player, basically that's been the idea, right? Season 8, Green Wards got removed,
and
all of a sudden it's all about getting ahead. It's all about getting ahead. And then for pretty much every single year since I've played, it's all been about early game aggression, getting ahead before 15 minutes, because after 15 minutes, it's hard to come back when you have to face check a team that's full of fed champions.
It's true.
Yeah, that is very true. Now, coming back to the present, we've talked about the past, now the present. What's your final goal? Is it winning Worlds? Do you reckon you can do it? Is this the team to do it?
Yeah, well, again, like for me, the hardest part about being on a new team is always to figure out how people are going to behave in like the roughest environments. Because the regular split is one thing, playoffs is another. International competition, though, those boot camps, they're rough. They basically just slap you across the face and tell you you're shit.
Yeah. Jeez.
Everything you thought you were good at, you're not.
Yeah. I still bring it up anytime people talk about scrimming Eastern teams. I still bring up your stories about scrimming the Shy in 2018. Because I'm like, people don't understand. People don't understand.
There's a lot of things going on. I mean, it goes both ways, right? Like adaptation is key, right? So you go in, you suck for the first 2 weeks, but you've got 4 more weeks before World starts.
Sure.
Usually like 6 weeks before World starts, 5 weeks before World starts is when you go there and you start practicing. And if you don't adapt, you're going to fall behind and you're probably going to flop, right? But you do have 6 weeks to do it. It's just the first 3 weeks, usually, at least in my experience, like 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, you're gonna see the defeat screen quite a few times in scrims. It's gonna pop up. You're gonna have to deal with a lot of losses that feel very frustrating, hard to deal with. You're not sure what to do. But as long as you get into the motion of problem solving, I think it always is going to work out. Yeah. I think that's one of the main reasons why international success has not eluded me. At least I think top 8 worlds is still success to me. It's not where I want to be. Winning worlds is obviously the goal, but I'm proud to say that I've been top 8 at worlds for the past 3 years. For me, that's something that it's still something.
Yeah,
it's not where I want to be, but I'm still satisfied with that for sure.
I think it's awesome because, frankly, I mean, for a long time that wasn't. Outside of the years where we were literally auto-qualified into top 8, for a long time that wasn't. There was a number of years where that was a bit tough to acquire. There was a number of difficult years for EU. So I'm happy with top 8. Obviously, we're all hungry for that finals and for that trophy. But I think, recognizing still that your accomplishments are still quite significant in the scheme of things is super cool. As a final question before we shift our attention to maybe some more meta discussion here, you talked about you and Hylissang kind of bringing culture to the team. That culture that you talked about of like recognizing your own mistakes, being willing to improve. Do you think that's part of the culture that you guys carry on? And when you look at the identity, your cat, it's so funny. Don't worry about it. It's totally fine because this is the content gold that people want.
He's out there. He's enjoying himself.
When you look at the team culture and kind of how Fnatic functions now, I guess, would you look at you and Hylissang across the board entirely as kind of like the defining members? They're the members that define the culture of Fnatic.
I actually wouldn't say so. I mean, I think me and Hilly, we're kind of the same, so you can kind of count us as one. Mm-hmm. It's like we bring the same culture, kind of.
Yeah.
But I still think Selfmade brings his own flair to any team. Obviously, he's a very talented player, so with talented players, people tend to gravitate around those. Mm-hmm. I think that's natural. And myself as a player, I think I've always done best when I've accommodated for the needs of my teammates and at least put them in a better position. And I think that's where drawing the line for me can be difficult.
Yeah.
Because am I supposed to carry Fnatic? Am I supposed to make sure that the strong players on Fnatic can carry? I'm not sure. But what's worked for me is picking champions that enable my teammates more so than enabling myself. So I think with that in mind, I would say Selfmade plays as big a role in our culture as we do.
Yeah, that's super cool, and I love that insight because I think that Fnatic is me as a team that's always felt like it's always had strong personalities in one form or another, for better or for worse, and it's always cool to see kind of how your team continues to grow and evolve. Because since this new iteration of G2, right, in 2019, it always feels like their team story has been kind of the same. And maybe it shifts a bit with Reckless, but they're happy, they're lucky, they're having fun, they're having a good time. But they're also winning everything, right? So that's a pretty easy environment to maintain. But I think you guys as the other really big, consistent contenders, Rogue now rising up to maybe join you there, it's cool to see how your team is constantly evolving from a communication standpoint. And I think that I'm a little bit biased here in that, like, I respect G2. I do think they're the best team in our league, obviously. But I think from a storytelling standpoint, I'm a sucker for a good story, and it feels like Fnatic always has a good story. You know what I mean? Because it just feels like you guys are always addressing something new, always evolving. There's always new changes. There's always something new going on, and that's exciting to look at. But the thing that I want to touch on here, you talked about your role, being more supportive, being, accommodating your team. So let's talk about top lane right now, Bwipo, because it seems like there's a lot of accommodating going on. There was like a Yone game there, and there was like a Riven game there, but otherwise it feels like you are chilling on your island, chilling. I don't know. What are you doing? What the hell is happening in competitive top lane right now? Because I feel like outside of one or two really crazy Mega Nars, I feel like top lane is not the most thrilling lane in the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I personally don't like about the role right now. I feel like in the past there was always the point where, at least, all right. So before I go to the past, like right now, I feel like you pick a lane dominant champion and you go even, and it's like he's doing his job. And it's like, is he really though? Like, is that really what your champion's supposed to do? Like you pick Gnar, you go even, and you hope for the best, because that's really how it feels, right? It doesn't feel like, well, especially with Gnar's specific case here, where it's like, what does Gnar really accomplish past laning phase, right? Like he has a side lane pressure, which no one uses. Again, people run to the dragon or the Baron area and fight to the death. That's kind of how it works nowadays. That's how League of Legends is played at the highest level. It's not a bad strategy, just saying that's what people do. And then you ask yourself, all right, so what does Gnar bring to the table? It's he brings Mega Gnar, the most telegraphed. I don't even know how to describe this in a way where people really understand.
It's 3 seconds of hard CC between the W and the ult at level 16. Yeah. Come on,
it's AoE,
and it's literally like it's this promise of gold. You know what I mean? And it's you have to like your enemy team has to have their hands off the keyboard. They have to be colorblind to the color red so that they cannot see the rage bar and assume that it's still not full yet. But then it's gonna happen, Bwipo. But then they're gonna get it. And as much as it's the most telegraphed thing, we still have seen there were a couple moments. One of the Gen X teams comes to mind where teams are still. It's working, Bwipo. I agree that on paper it should probably never work. If you see the Gnar, you should know exactly what he's going to do. But it works.
I mean, obviously, there's more nuance to it than that, right? It's not like, oh, he's mega. Like, let's just wait it out. If they're stronger, they're going to start the dragon, and you're going to come in, and then you're going to come into a Mega Gnar, and then you're going to lose. Or you're not going to come in, and you're going to lose the objective. So it's like, it's not like there's no purpose in having him. It's just, if you fall behind, he gives you no, like, fallback, right?
Yeah.
You have no reliable way to take over the game again. Gnar's going to come in, maybe. Hopefully. You're hoping it. Because, if someone pokes Gnar, he gets angry, and then he gets big, and it's like, oh, well, shit. I guess that's our engage, well, that's it. That was our main engage tool that we were supposed to have. That's not an Ornhorn, which comes when you want it to. It's not a Sound ult, which comes when you want it to. You can even argue it's not a Renekton flash, which goes when it wants to.
Yeah.
But in general, I feel like right now the meta top lane is like what? It's Renekton, Gnar. I'm trying to think. Like
Sion.
These two are like the main offenders for sure.
Sion. For sure as well.
Sion is in a different category where it's like I can see why people draft him at least. Like Renekton and Gnar, like you win lane, and if you don't, problem number 1. And if your team falls behind and you win lane, problem number 2 still. Because these champions thrive when your team is ahead. Because you can pick a fight whenever you want. Because you're mega, you jump in, you use Stride Breaker, you hit someone with a slow, probably a fight starting. Might be good, might be bad, but if you're ahead, odds are you're going to want to fight. Or they have to run into you. Either way works, right? You want, as a Renekton, you're fed. Like, you want people to run to you, right? That's kind of a good thing. At least in my experience when I play Renekton. But all things considered, top lane meta, I feel like from the laning phase to the team fights, it's like, just pick a bruiser, buy Starax, buy Gore Drinker or Stride Breaker, and then just try to have as much effective HP as possible to be a big meat shield that deals some damage.
Yeah.
That's it.
Dang.
And that's kind of, I mean, there's not much to it, right? I really don't feel like there's much to it.
I was like, damn, all right, well, this is like interesting. And then you gave me the TLDR, and I was like, oh yeah, oh well, no, that's not quite as much. I want more from that. I feel like we had more interesting. There were more interesting, more dynamic metas previously.
I mean, there can be, and I think they're up and coming. Like Sound showing up. He's kind of the same. Like he just builds other items, but I guess he has a cool ultimate.
That's true.
At least he doesn't build. I mean, I actually think he can build Starbreaker and Starax.
Oh boy,
some people haven't evolved yet. But I don't think it's that bad of a build on him, to be honest. But yeah, like I think there's niche outliers, right? There's the Jace, there's the Gangplank. Gragas looks cool. I mean, again, he buys different items, but he looks cool. He has Body Slam Flash and an ult.
I
quite
like
flashy.
that.
It's always nice.
As a caster,
At least he's reliable. Like that's the thing, right? It's like the difference between I feel like Gragas and Sion and Gangplank compared to this Gnar and Renekton is they're reliable. You know, you pick them, you know what you're gonna get, and you can consistently recreate what you're getting. With Gnar, it's like you can't recreate getting a 5-man Mega Gnar or a 2-man Mega Gnar or a 1-man Mega Gnar for that like idea, right? Because as a champion, he doesn't have reliability. So all things considered, I feel like it's hard to really pinpoint top lane meta and what it is, because when the meta has revolved around a lane dominant champion, Gnar, that basically has been buffed to a point where Mega Gnar is uncontestable at all stages. I feel like the only time you can contest Mega Gnar is when he doesn't have his ult, which
it's like a 30-second
after
cooldown.
level 11 he has ult. He has ult every time he turns Mega. So it's pretty hard to really determine what top lane like what really matters in top lane. You know, it's like what's really important about a top laner. Like what's a quality of a top laner that you really want to have, you know?
Well,
it's farming creeps. That's what I can think of.
Well, Bwipo, in that case, we brought this. Maybe you've just kind of confirmed that maybe this is the worst time to make this list, but we're going to ask you to make it anyway. We want to know your top 5 top laners, and maybe that's your top 5 creep farmers. Maybe that's your top. Maybe that's your top 5 blind pick Gnar people, or people who go even in lane. Like I don't know. The top laners doesn't sound like there's a lot of wins for top laners right now. But in spite of that, I would love to know who is in your top 5. It can be ordered or unordered, but who do you think are like who are the big dogs in the land of Gnar?
I mean, I always do wonder, even though he hasn't played Gnar once, I think. Maybe once. I'm not sure, actually. I don't think he's played Gnar this season. He used to be a big Gnar player, so I'm not sure why he didn't. But either way, I think Wunder is obviously the honorary number 1. Again, honorary or not, you could put him number 1 either way. He's just most consistent player across the 2-3 years G2's been winning. Mm-hmm. Can't really argue against putting him number 1. He's had great performances, always been carrying G2 when they needed him to, and otherwise been a very solid, reliable top laner. You know, whether he's on the tank or a carry, he's always done well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can play what he needs to, often has something spicy up and coming if need be. You know, we've even seen him on Enchanters, actually. So he's always played really well. Yeah. Always one of the reasons why G2 looks good.
And he definitely feels like one of the few people who is bucking the trend. You're right, he hasn't played Gnar at all, but he's played a lot of the more interesting things. Gragas is still his most played, so definitely like that's less flashy, but he played the Quinn, he played the Aurelia, the Ivern. Now the Ivern and the Aurelia felt a little less like super serious picks to me, but he experimented with the Kled. There was, you know, a bit of Set, something that you've tried your hand on, and obviously the Karma, the pick that you just mentioned most recently as well, which was interesting. Hard for me to gauge how good it was, but yeah, I think it's fair to put Wunder number 1. I think it's always difficult, like when a player's performing very well and they're also on a number 1 team, I think it's hard to take them out of that number 1 slot. Like someone else has to be really overperforming for that to be the case.
Yeah, for sure. I think I missed the days of like the the cannons going in, like Smeb, Penta killing people, all these things, the shy Aatrox, Jaces, Nuggery on the cannon as well. Those things make you think like, oh, okay, top lane actually has impact in the team fights, but nowadays it's like, yeah.
I think they definitely have impact. I think they definitely do. Like, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I feel like the role is weak. You know, like I play on neck and I flash on someone, I probably one shot,
especially with Prowler's Claw.
Like, you have like a million effective HP and you one shot people. Like Gnar is the same. You know, you still do a lot of damage in team fights, even if you can't like do like anything game changing. But I would say on average, there is a pretty big difference between like what is considered successful. You know, like you pick Jace, you pick Kennen, you smash your lane. It's like that's obvious. You know, that's obviously this guy is at the helm of the game. You know, like he's taking care of what needs to be taken care of. He's playing Kennen 20 CS up against Gnar, smashing the guy. He's playing Jace 20 CS up against Gnar or Aatrox or whatever. He's smashing the game.
Yep.
You can also see it with how much damage these champions deal. You know, it's like the damage goes like whoosh. You know, Jace getting ahead is like, what is happening? You know, champion is one-shotting people.
Yeah.
Whereas with Renekton, Gnar, and stuff, it's like they just get beefier. Like they get really beefy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Wunder number 1? Give us a quick run through of 2, 3, 4, 5. We can talk about it more, but if you just give us the in your head, bam, 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 bam. What do you got?
So I mean, Odoamne comes to mind. Armut comes to mind.
Are you excluding yourself from this list? By the way,
I don't think there's a point in rating myself.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Just making sure for people at home. So
I mean, again, if I rating myself publicly, rating myself privately, it's always different. That's why I'm just not going to rate myself, because from my perspective, I need to have the confidence to be number one in order to contest number one. Therefore, I always have to put myself number one. It's just the way I work. That's why I'm not going to rate myself, because if not, I'll be number one and people would make fun of me, and that's not fun.
Yeah, that's fair.
It is, but
that's fair enough.
Nah,
there you go.
Yeah, but for sure. Okay,
you want to put me in brackets number one? You can go ahead.
No. I mean, I told you we like the clickbait, but we don't have to fish for it that hard. You just excluded yourself from the list process. That's totally fine. So outside of you, Wonder number one. Who else? You said Odoamne's on the list.
Yeah, Odoamne, Armut. Trying to think. These are the people that stand out to me. Like a little bit at least. Again, I think Odoamne and Armut are farming well. They buy their bruiser items. They walk into a team fight and do their job. Their teams get them to that stage. Again, I don't think this split has been like holy moly, top laners are popping off 24/7. It's more like, well, you pick the Renekton, you pick the Gnar, you pick the Sion, you showed up. Good job, Keith.
You simultaneously praise them, but also made their accomplishments sound like meaningless, and I love it. And I know you don't mean. I know you're just talking about the role in general, right? I know it's not specific to these guys, but it's so funny because you're just like, yeah, Odoamne and Armut are good. They farm their lane, they buy their items, and they go in and they push their buttons.
They showed up.
They exist.
Oh yeah,
it's
they
like, it's like what are the guys under top 5 doing if that's the standard for top 5? That's like a dark time for top lane. Okay, so we've got
that's the hard part.
Yeah,
that's the hard part, right? It's like, who isn't doing that?
True.
No one comes to mind, but at the same time, there is a little bit of difference, right? There's a little bit of like, he's doing a better job. They're finding the team fights. Like Broken Blade comes to mind. Like Broken Blade, might not be like they went on like a massive loss streak, but at least in the games that I remember, he was farming his creeps well, and then he showed up. Like he had a Fiora game where, like, great example. Like he played Fiora, bought the same items that everyone else buys, like Starax and Stridebreaker. And he killed some people in a team fight. It's like, I mean, I guess, you did it on Fiora, you do it on every champion. I'm trying to think, like, I want to say Broken Blade because I remember the Aatrox gaming against you2, but that's a while ago.
Do you want me to list the people that you don't have so far, just in case? So there's
you can if you want.
Yeah, so White Knight, Cries, Hirit, Genex, Sigenda are the only people that you haven't said yet. So far of the top 5, excluding yourself, you've named Wonder, Odoamne, Armut, Broken Blade, no particular order yet, outside of Wonder number 1. But those are the names to consider. So,
Genex, I forgot this one.
Genex is on that. So if you, I mean, this is where the top 5 gets tough, right? Because now we got to talk about who's cutting out. Now, with yourself, there's technically 6, so you only need to cut four players total from this list.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I don't know. It's like, honestly, like after like the 3 people I mentioned, I feel like everyone else is like the same. Like I think Cries played really solid in the first few games. Like he was actually breaking the meta in that sense, where he was playing Cho'Gath, Enchanters, some Gangplank, and that actually, in my opinion, takes a lot more skill, because you actually have to navigate a laning phase against champions like Gnar and Renekton, which are like really annoying to lane against because they have no resource, so they kind of just push you in and poke you whenever they want. They don't really have to use their brain too much for trading. It's like, it's just natural. You want to use your spells when they walk into you. Not to say that it takes no skill to play them, just navigating a laning phase as these scaling champions is, in my opinion, what has determined skill on top lane, right? Yeah. It's always been the benchmark of how strong a region's top laners are. If someone can pick Ornn blind or pick Ornn into a lane bully and then get away with that, that's a huge deal. Like that is proof of skill. In a region where Gangplank is very prevalent, this is the same idea. People will pick Vladimir into Gangplank. People will pick Lucians, Ryze, Jace, all these champions in the Gangplank, and having players in your region be capable of playing Gangplank into those matchups is definitely indicative of how skilled your region is as top laners. Because if you can't play scaling champions into lane bullies top lane, it just means your top laners are kind of bad.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the way it is, right? So to me, Cries definitely should be in top 5. I'm not sure if he should be 4 or 5. But the fact that he was able to do that consistently, to me, is something that is definitely showing of skill. Like it's quite difficult to do.
I think, to me, that is so wild, because I look at this. I think it's really hard to figure out who's number 5, right? I think there's a lot of arguments. I might have said Hirit just because of his impact on his team, but the fact that you've advocated for Cries, I think, is really cool, because this is a guy, and I would love to get your thoughts on this since we're on the subject of Cries, because we've talked about him a few times on the show, and Cadril, you played with him too, so there's a lot of qualified opinions here. More qualified than mine, but I'm gonna give mine anyway. But my impression last year is that he was playing scaling all the time, and it was it always felt pretty impossible for me to get a read on this guy, but ultimately he was falling behind in lanes where he was supposed to fall behind. And so it was like, I could never tell you if Kryze was good or bad. I could just tell you Excel was losing, and I didn't like the Vladimirs and the Kales. So I think it's crazy to see the turnaround this season. But from your perspective, was Kryze always this good? Or is this something that has happened very recently? Is it just exclusive to this season? And how much of this comes from like the few games that you guys have played on stage versus like experience behind the scenes in scrims?
I mean, ultimately, I think it comes down to the fact that he's always gotten away with the laning phase. Like, he never got their award because the champs he picked were just bad. Like, he picked Vladimir and Kale. It's like, when he picked them, they weren't like, oh my god, these champs are broken. Like, they have been. Don't get me wrong. These champions have reached that point in the past. It's just, when you do it on the Camille, obviously that's why he drew a lot of Camille bans, because he was able to do that reliably. And I'm pretty sure Camille was banned very often against Excel this split and in the past. Because of this, it's different. Like when you play a champion that is actually going to pay off big time rather than a champion that might pay off, it's different, right? Picking a champion just for your lane, just because you can lane and you might have value, is different from picking a solid champion and then pulling it off. Urgot comes to mind for me, for example. It's a champion that I used to play that was like this. Like, he's a very hard scaling champion. He's going to show up in team fights to kill everyone if he gets to that point. So I think Kryze has always been at that level. It's just he didn't really pick champions that would show it. He would pick Kale into Ornn and then not really pay attention to the composition. So, he might run into an Alistar and get comboed, and that would be the end of that, or a Rakan and get RW'd, and that would be the end of that. And then your Kale that was supposed to scale into the late game kind of just got Rakan. Well, sucks. Same with Vladimir. So I think when he shifted more towards the reliable team fight oriented champions like the Cho'Gath, like the Gangplank, some of the enchanters, I think you could see it more reliably, because when he got to that stage, you also saw way more effect from these champions. Like, you saw these champions make a difference in the game.
Yeah, I think Kryze is an interesting character. When we signed him in summer, he had barely 1 year of competitive experience. He was purely a solo queue player, and when I talked to Joey Youngbuck, we were like, yeah, okay, Kryze is probably going to be really good, but he's going to need time to come out of his shell. And when I met him in person, he was quite shy. He wanted to play his comfortable champion, split pushing, scaling. I don't think he had the confidence. He had to go all out lane phase, like show what he's really made of. And I think that this off season he's grown a lot. Especially in summer split, his champion pool was quite small. Vladimir, Kale, Camille. He wants to split push and just be scaling. But now he's definitely coming out with all the pixies, being creative. I think Kryze is definitely someone to keep an eye on going forward throughout the year. Although Excel's not having the greatest showing, I think that what we got out of Kryze last year, especially in summer, having 8 wins and 10 losses, was actually pretty impressive to me. Surprising we didn't make playoffs. It sucked, but the team as a whole was actually functioning pretty well with that kind of play style. Like, put Kryze on scaling, play to bot. Kryze is our late game win condition. Patrick's our team fight win condition. Didn't work in the end, but that was what we were going for. And I think Kryze definitely stepped up this split, especially. And I think as time progresses, he should get better and better and better. And definitely have high hopes for him.
Damn, I love that insight. I kind of, there was moments, obviously at the start of the split, I was like on the Kryze hype train. Not the immediate start, because I didn't love the Enchanter's top lane as much as you guys do. But I liked the Cho'Gath. I liked the Camille games. I was like, yes, who is this man? This is what I've been waiting to see. Yeah. So it's cool to hear him get that much praise and to have that insight from both of you. That said, Bwipo, to round things out here, final order, or you can do unordered completely if you want. It is your top 5 list, but so far the names you've listed are Wunder, Odoamne, Armut, Broken Blade, and Kryze. Is it that order? Is there anything you want to shift 1 through 5? What's it going to be?
So for me, obviously the 4 people I mentioned outside of Broken Blade are definitely top 4. I think Kryze is the only one that's like a little bit controversial, because again, I value that scaling aspect. I value the fact that you can play a tank into a carry matchup and still be relevant in the game. I don't think it's that easy. But at the same time, I think it's important that you can play what the meta needs. And I feel like the other 3 have done that better. I think Armut, Odoamne, and Wunder have been the most solid at this. Broken Blade, for me, his earlier game splits are what came to mind. So that's where I was like, yeah, Broken Blade. Yeah. But right now, I'm not 100% sure. I just don't know. I'm trying to actually look at all the top laners again now to have a look. Like
White Knight, Herit, Gen-X,
could be
like Herit and Gen-X stick out to me. Herit obviously had a pretty big performance for his team. He played the Jace, got ahead a lot of games. Always had to, generally speaking, had a decent performance. I feel like this split, nothing extreme, but definitely noteworthy. So again, I think it's pretty hard actually to pick someone, because I feel like it's kind of the same. It's like all three of these names. Like I guess Genax has had the best performance out of them if I think about it, because I feel like his team, like for me, Genax should be number 5, because now that I think about it, his team has conformed to that playstyle, right? Like you pick a bruiser top, you go to the dragon area, baron area, and you fight to the death with 2 or 3 beefy champions and 2 or 3 carries, and I feel like they've done a pretty good job at that. So honestly, I think I'm gonna go ahead and call Genax for number 5, because I feel like that's a pretty good thing. When you're a top laner and your team rallies around the fact that you're gonna run into a team fight and try to kill everyone, and you actually win games that way. It's very reminiscent of what happened with Fnatic in 2019 for me, and I felt pretty good when I picked Aatrox and I led the team into battle.
Yeah, led the team into battle. I love it.
And he's one of the few guys who's gotten to cast Gnarled on multiple people this season, multiple times. So Mega Gnar. So it looks good. So final list, and correct me if I'm wrong here. We got Wunder, and again, this is excluding Bwipo. So it's Wunder number 1, Odo 2, Armut 3, Kryze number 4, and Genax number 5.
I think that's pretty solid.
Interesting.
Dude, that's super cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing the list, and especially for the insight on Kryze and to Genax. We'll bring you back when the meta is, Jace versus Kennen every game, or there's Kalista top running around, so we can get the reevaluation at some point, because like you said, maybe it's a little bit harder in this meta to see the true colors of every top laner. But
the funny thing about that is that when there was this meta, I would always run away and play the tanks into them, because I felt like it was better. So it's never like I actually fought fire with fire. It's like, oh, he picks Kennen, I'll just take a little Sion game here or a Maokai game, no problem. It was never like, he picked Kennen, like this guy's about to get jaced. It's not like I haven't done it. It's just it's not something I tended to do and never have. It's why I value scaling, because that's always what I found the better way of playing the game. 20 CS lead, I really don't mind. I really don't care about CSD at 15. I will, even when I'm ahead and I'm about to be 50 CS up, it's very rare that I'm going to go for that. I'll probably TP bot and see what happens there, rather than enjoy my advantage. So all things considered, it's a preference thing for sure.
I like it. Very selfless. Well, Bwipo, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, man. Good luck to you in your upcoming Super Week. Hope for the best for you guys' final playoff placing. I guess technically you're not qualified through whatever tiebreaker matchups Mad are, for reasons that I don't really understand, but has something to do with tiebreaker rules. But it's been confirmed for me, so I'm not going to get into that. But good luck. It seems assured to me. Obviously, it's not 100% locked, but it feels like you guys are assured for playoffs. So good luck in your fight for seeding this weekend against a wide variety of opponents. Super Weeks, woo.
I mean, I'm looking forward to it. Super Weeks are nice. The thing about Super Weeks is it's always something to look forward to. It's always maybe someone has something special. It's always the last week, right? So you never know.
Okay.
Until you know.
The last final snippet of a question. Do you have anything special for us, Bwipo? You don't have to tell us what it is. Just let the fans know. Is there something?
People already know. People already know. I mean, I stream it every day. It's champion that turns the lights off.
Champion that turns the lights off.
I like it. I know what it is.
Okay.
Twitch.tv/Bwipo. Right?
Bwipo lol, I believe.
Bwipo lol. You can also, just check out Bwipo on Twitter, but he's streaming all the time. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of hoping for the AP Volibear, but if you're looking for our spicy new top lane picks, the Bwipo stream is the place to go. But otherwise, again, good luck, and we'll try to sneak Vedi onto the casting desk to talk about top lane lights out, if top lane lights out
darkness.
Honestly, I think this champ is OP as hell, man. Doing these and then LPL with it. I don't know. This champ is broken. I don't know. We'll see.
There you have it. It's broken. We'll see if it comes out. That's it for our time with Bwipo. Thanks again, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Bwipo, as always. Fantastic guest. Always offers so much insight and is so open with that knowledge. I really appreciate that about having him on. But Fnatic, as we said before, all but locked in playoffs, and it's pretty much feels like a sure thing that they're going to be there. It would take really some ludicrously insane circumstances for them to be gone. But speaking of, let's talk about the most hype potential story coming into playoffs, and that is the Vitality Miracle Run. Now, for those of you, and maybe we use Miracle Run too liberally, but Vitality are currently 4-11.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they are playing this week Cadril, Schalke 04, Misfits, and Astralis.
Yeah.
So, not that crazy of a schedule. And most importantly, with Schalke and Misfits, as you can see in the standings, if you're watching, but they're both tied at 6 and 9, and they're currently in 6th place.
Good choice. Nice numbers.
If they go 0-3 this week, both of them, Vitality can finish at 7 wins. Now, that's the simplest case for Vitality to qualify for playoffs.
Yeah.
Simplest case. Now, there are tiebreaker scenarios, and I won't get into them. Now, the thing about ending on a super week is that there's still too many freaking scenarios to break down. This is the difficulty. In years past, guys, I might have tried to break down, hey, this is why this matches, this is what the percentages are, but at this point, it's just very difficult to do. That said, we'll keep you guys updated on the broadcast. That's the simplest case, but there are other situations where Vitality can make it through, finding tiebreakers, finding opportunities. Better win record in the second half is also really significant. If they tie teams in the head-to-head, it's broken, I believe, by better win record in the second half. And, well, if you're making Vitality, if you remember, had a pretty crap win record.
Yeah.
And Schalke, a team that has been losing constantly, if they end up in tie with Schalke after beating Schalke this weekend, we may have ourselves Vitality knocking Schalke out of playoffs for that final spot. It is possible.
Fnatic hold a lot of cards. Fnatic are against Schalke and Misfits in the Super Week. So if they actually beat them, I mean, I think the simplest way is, like you said, Vitality getting wins and them going 0-3. But the important thing to note is Schalke plays against Vitality this weekend. Yep. And if Schalke lose to Fnatic and they lose to Vitality, that means Schalke realistically only get 1 win. And if Vitality 3-0 it, then they're tied. So I think there's a world where Vitality can make it in many different scenarios, but they have to win every single game. Because if they lost one game, let's say Schalke wins the game, they get 7 wins, it's over. So let's look at Vitality. Vitality have to go 3-0. Misfits have quite a difficult schedule. They have Fnatic, Mad Lions, and then they have Vitality as well. So lots up in the air. Misfits facing Vitality, Schalke facing Vitality. It's all on Vitality, basically. If Vitality lose the games, they're out of the playoffs run. Yeah. It's basically Schalke versus Misfits, and it comes down to who can clutch it out against Fnatic.
For sure. And I think so, to recap, the teams that we were talking about last week were Excel, Schalke, and Misfits. Now, Excel falling down again. They're a little bit behind. They play Rogue, they play Schalke, and they play G2. Excel, that's the true miracle if Excel can make it to playoffs.
That's the unicorn run.
That's beyond. Like, that is unheard of.
That's the Narnia run.
That is like your consciousness has ascended to another level. Like, we don't even have a word in any language known to man. We have to use the language of the elder gods to describe what this is. This concept that is so beyond miracle.
The elven language or something. No, it's an
Klingon.
We'll call it the intergalactic run.
The intergalactic run.
That's what Excel.
That's what Excel
because they face G2 and Rogue, and they need 2 wins at least.
Yeah.
And you're against G2 and Rogue. So, I mean, yeah, if they go 3-0 this week, the intergalactic run is ahead and they're 8 wins and they're up there. But
we're not selling tickets to the intergalactic run, people.
We're not selling tickets to the miracle run has a train, but the intergalactic one doesn't, because I think we should be a little bit realistic and just say it's going to be very tough for them. Not that they're out, but it's going to be very, very tough.
Very, very hard. In a similar vein, Schalke also on this big lose streak, they play Vitality, Excel, and Fnatic. So their schedule it still feels like very much in their own hands. Of the teams that we've listed so far, they have one of the easier schedules. So while Misfits right now you would favor based on recent performance, in terms of schedule, Schalke are much more favored to actually take this final playoff spot. Yeah. So something important to note there.
And that's the thing. Like, Schalke winning those games in the early stages of the split against the harder teams has actually helped them a lot. G2, Rogue, they beat them. Mm-hmm. This is helping them a lot at the late stage of the split, right? They have an easier schedule than Misfits, but Misfits is playing better. So those are definitely the 2 teams to keep an eye on. Vitality can make a miracle run. But Dracos, I think the thing that I'm looking at is G2 Rogue. Who's going to finish first? Because in my bet, I put that Rogue would finish first. God. And you put that G2 would finish first. But now Rogue's 1 win behind. So I need G2 to go 0-1-2 this weekend, and then I'll make it.
G2 play Mad, SK, and XL. And so, all things considered, that is what I would normally call a pretty difficult schedule. Mm-hmm. For G2, it's hard to know what we're going to get this week. We talked about it on cast, though. This G2 feels like they're tryharding every single game. Now, that might change with their final game on XL. I think generally in previous seasons, Grabs' philosophy has always been, as long as the game matters for either us or the team we're playing against, we'll take it seriously. So if Excel are already locked out by Saturday, maybe we see a troll game there and that could shift. But I feel like as long as first place is on the line, and first place does matter. Remember, you get to pick between your opponents in the first round if you're first place, and you get whatever's left over if you're second. It does matter a lot.
Yeah,
it's possible. On the other side, Rogue have Excel, Rogue have Fnatic, and Rogue have SK. So I'd say marginally harder schedule for Rogue. They both have XL, but it's Fnatic versus Mad. Depends on what you think is going to be the more difficult opponent.
I suppose so. But like, I just hate this. Why did I put Rogue first, man? It's like we
both jinxed ourselves. We both tried too hard to think of things that would be creative to win, and Ender just stayed the tried and true. Like, this is the generic playoff predictions.
Okay, if I lose just because of this G2 rogue prediction, I'm gonna hate myself. But yeah, that's an interesting one. The lookout for first place. I think G2 pretty much have it in the bag, but the playoffs race is definitely on. I think every single split there's a playoffs race for one spot, and it's always the 6th spot, and it's always 3 teams fighting for it. But the funny thing is, last year summer it was us versus Origin for the slot, and then Schalke came from 3 wins to 8. Or something like this in a row.
Origin dropped like a rock.
And Origin we were racing Origin in like week 7 of playoffs. This was the week before the Super Week. It was like 6 and something between us. Exact same wins. And all of a sudden, Origin finished last and we finished 7th and Schalke got the spot. So yeah, Vitality can definitely upset here.
So let's. I want to just take a chance to highlight a couple of the games. If you are a Vitality fan, you are watching each and every single day. On Friday, it's Schalke. On Saturday, it's Misfits. And on Sunday, it is Astralis. Maybe you get to breathe a little bit easier on Sunday. Maybe Astralis play like they are unchained because there's no pressure on them.
I think it's the other way around. I think it's Astralis on Friday.
Oh, did we reorganize the schedule?
And yeah.
Oh, we reorganized the schedule. All right, well, ignore the schedule. I'll just tell you the important games then because I don't have the right schedule in front of me. Other really, really significant games are going to be Schalke No Fear versus Vitality is very important for both Schalke there. Misfits need to find a win is the big thing. Again, Misfits play Vitality. That's a great place for them to find a win. It simultaneously crushes the Vitality dreams and pushes them ahead. Mm-hmm. That would be my assumption of where they could find it. They could also pull off a win against Mad Lions or Fnatic. But Misfits just need to find one win somewhere. Otherwise, to be completely honest, there's no the really singular defining games are usually teams that are neck and neck battling each other, and we just don't have too many of those this week. So this is going to be one of those weeks where every game counts.
Yeah.
But there are not a lot of singularly defining games outside of where Vitality plays Misfits and Vitality plays Schalke.
But I think, that's the cool thing though. Everyone's destiny is in their own hands, right? If everyone wins, then they'll make it basically. So it's not like, oh, we lost this one game, we're out. Like Schalke Misfits, Schalke won, Schalke's in. It's not like that. It's like, this is 3 games, and these 3 games decide your fate. Win as many as you can. Good luck, have fun.
Absolutely. What a way to end. Good luck, have fun. Super Week is coming up. That is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. 3 back-to-back days of LEC.
Back.
The days start to stack, folks. 15 games for you to watch this weekend, deciding just about everything. I believe we'll find out playoff seeding. There's a week break after that as we head into playoffs. But this is it. This is Super Week. You can find out if your team's going to make it. RXL doomed to be 7th for the rest of their lives.
It's crazy to me to be on the other end of the playoffs race. Normally, I'm in the playoffs race, stuck in the mud, in the trenches,
now
fighting
you just
for my life.
Watch.
And now I'm just on the sidelines, just chilling with my drink, just watching how it unfolds. It's so much different.
Fight for me, peasants.
No, not so much, but yeah, in a sense. Yeah.
All right, this has been EUphoria Season 7, Episode 8. Thanks again to Bwipo for joining us, and good luck to all the teams fighting for their playoff seeding. We'll be watching and having a damn good time.
Lovely.